Hello and welcome to another episode of the Irish Craft Beer Show, where today I'm joined by Shane Phelan, who, if you're a member of any of the homebrew forums in Ireland, you'll know as Shiny.
Hello.
How's it going? So,
thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We're on a location today. We're actually in Tog, which is a hackerspace, and you're a member here, are you?
I've been a member of Tog for the last 8 months, and Hackerspace is essentially a group of members who build things. So it's kind of like brewing except brewing. Well, brewing is one of the things we do here now. People work on their own projects, so they build. Today, all the TOG members are preparing for Maker Faire, which is on the 26th of July in a couple of weeks' time.
It's probably a few weeks ago by the time this is released, but anyway.
Touche. And they're all building projects. I think they've got like a granny mobile out there, and they're hacking that to carry a giant duck head.
Yes.
And they're going to remotely control everything. And they develop photos. They have workshops here. They invite people in to give talks.
Yeah.
And they have a whole range of different activities.
I think it's what the word nerdvana was invented to describe.
Nerdvana, but they've broad appeal. You know, when they go to different open days, the kids are really, really interested in, and they're showing people how to reuse things for different purposes. So it's not hacking per se, it's giving things an additional use.
But what we're here for today, we're here for brewing.
And in fairness, we brought brewing into Tog, and they've been fascinated by the access to beer and wine and the process. Time
for a brew day. So what are we brewing today, Shane?
So today we're brewing Irish Red Ale. The purpose of this brew, well, one of the purposes is I always wanted to brew one. And the second reason is there's a brewing competition at the end of the summer, been held by Garden County Brewers. It's an Irish Red Ale specifically competition. And their aim is to try and generally people find Irish Red Ale as a style quite boring. I wouldn't disagree with that. So the aim of one of the aims of the competition is to try and find a recipe or an approach to brewing an Irish Red Ale that's more interesting or more drinkable than what is out there at the moment.
Yes.
This is my attempt to try and stay true to the style as best I can, while at the same time trying to make something a little bit different that stands out from the other beers. I don't know whether I will succeed in that. If you're there at the competition, I'm sure you can summarize.
We'll see how it goes.
So this is an all grain batch. And what I've done is from start to finish, treated the water, specifically chose the grains to be malt forward rather than hop forward. There are quite a lot of hops in it for an Irish Red Ale, but they're quite old hops, old-ish.
Yeah.
So I have readjusted the IBUs to suit the recipe or to suit the age of the hops.
The age of the hops, yeah.
And hopefully there won't be too much aroma, really is the aim. I think I can get away with bitterness in the competition, but if it smells like an American Red Ale, you're going to lose, well, not lose points, but it won't be an Irish Red.
It won't be an Irish Red then, yes. So if you take us through the recipe now, anyway, we'll see.
So the recipe I've used to try and, a lot of people I feel are going to use Mars Otter for this recipe. So I've used Pilsner to try and get a cleaner flavour for the base malt. Yeah. But I've put in a good few speciality malts. The Cara Red, I've used 750 grams, which is over 10%, which is quite a lot. But when you're brewing to win a competition, or at least a place in a competition, you have to step outside the guidelines slightly to stand out. So I've upped that to 750 grams. So it might be a little bit more intense than the other red beers. Maybe it might be a little bit harsh. I'm hoping it won't be. I've added Cara Pils and wheat to aid head retention. So I've added 500 grams of each, because the wheat, yes, will affect the clarity slightly, but with the Red Ale,
you'll get away with it.
Also, I've added chocolate and black malt. Now, this is definitely a bone of contention with Red Ale styles. Some breweries really load up the black or the patent malt or the roasted malt, and some people think that's disgusting in a Red Ale. And I think when it's overdone, it is. So I've tried to dial back the black malt a little bit. It is kind of required by the style, but to a point. I don't think it should be overdone. And then just the chocolate malt to give it a little bit of unusual complexity. And all of those were mashed in from the start. Sometimes maybe the Cara Red, if it's too intense this time, maybe that could go in for the sparge.
Yeah.
So you'd still get the colour and the flavour, but maybe not as much astringency from the grains. So anyone who's not familiar with all grain, this is called the Vorloff. So you can see all the big chunks of grain that are in it now, and we just keep doing this for a few litres until there's less grain in it.
It's lovely red colour, shiny.
Yeah, it's very red, isn't it? It looks a bit like a stout at the moment.
Also got a suntan.
I'm hoping it's all just sugar.
So it's different than the pale earlier.
I hope I haven't done the overdone the Cara Red now. So there's still grain in it, but less grain now because
Where's the grain going though?
the grain has it's started to settle now, and it's just like provides a natural filter. So all the heavy grains will be at the bottom, and then this progressively smaller grains at the top. And you'll see it now when it all comes out. It'll be just kind of dust on top. And there's different approaches. Some people say this should be slow, some say it should be fast. The tube isn't needed because there's this thing, is it hot side aeration or not? I don't think anyone really knows, you know. I just don't do it just in case. Do you want to do the honours? The stirring? Hurl's probably around your size too. Just 1 second. I'll throw in the water.
The wine you can get is on the website.
Get all them wonderful sugars out, don't we, shiny?
Good chalk. Yeah. So we're doing this because there's still quite a lot of sugar in the grain, and we're rinsing it really to get the last of it out.
You just let this sit now for another bit,
About 10 minutes, just to let it settle, and we'll rinse it out again. This is at a slightly higher temperature as well, so that's at 66 degrees. This is at 76 degrees now, and it's called a mash out, so the enzymes aren't happy at that temperature anymore, so they'll stop converting.
Right.
And also at the higher temperature, the sugar is more soluble, and we should be able to get more out.
More the beer or more the sugar?
More the sugar. So it's still a kid's drink for now, still like Coke. It's when the yeast get at it, it's when it becomes over 18. And use the pointiness of the hurl to get down into the corners as well. Sometimes there's grain sitting in there.
Well, if you don't take up brewing, you might take up sport.
It's not on the computer, that's not going to happen.
So you grow them along horizontal.
I tried, I tasted that.
What do you think? Like Coke?
Well, at first I tasted it and then I was like, you know, my dad said like push it around my mouth, and I did, and then I got to taste the tea.
Yes, actually.
Yeah, it worked. It's kind of like a big tea, but it will taste a lot nicer. You'll notice when you're older.
Have a constant supply.
No.
You wouldn't want to be like that's also the reason why the bottles, the German bottles, were able to fall off. Hot water.
At least I know if no grains are getting in. It's tightened in there and only water can get through.
See the big bubbles now? That's it. Leave it going till you're worried.
Oh.
One or
Uh-oh.
just not one or both when I'm worried.
Just one.
Is that good or bad?
It's good. It's you see the
Plugs themselves feel hot.
see the foam starting to get higher now.
Yeah,
So
and
if-
that's starting to show itself.
I'd be worried soon. Should be all right. Usually one is all right. Let's start that now.
Uh-oh.
75-minute boil.
was about to spin, we're in trouble.
We know it's boiling now.
It's an underwater one.
So I'm doing a lot of 10-gram additions of each type of hop, and I'm trying to limit the IBUs below 35 because Irish red ales, traditionally there should not be too much aroma from the hops, it should be all about the malt. Okay, the 6th edition of EKG and Prospect hops. So I've tried to hold back as much as I could till the last, say, 15 minutes. But I've purposely bought older hops, which would give less aroma, but still maybe give a little bit of flavour. And the Progress and Goldings are meant to work quite well together.
Like pour all in it? Or?
Yeah, pour all in.
So I can see where it gets the berry from. The berries.
How's it smell?
I don't really smell it at all.
Careful. Maybe hold it at the top so that if it drips, it's not going to.
We can scream.
Alright, got you, did it?
Yeah, little no, sorry.
Is that enough to swirl around?
Ah, yeah, actually.
No, don't get it on me.
Yeah, far away.
It's not very syrupy, is it, that?
Hurry up before the fruit flies, tell all the mates.
What yeast would you use with that?
Yeah, it's. I'll be adding croutons later.
Sure, Dave, isn't it?
Feels better. Slightly warmer.
Just hold it at the top. Just wait till the temperature hopefully drops. Just put it in, yeah. See what. Hopefully it's below 24.
This because I need help. This I think.
Is it dropping?
That should have been there.
What?
I lost it.
Doesn't look like it's
Just mix all
dropping.
the hops
I'll
together.
check.
Bowl.
It is 25.
It's a little bit warm. We might leave it to we're nearly leaving before we put the yeast in. Can you touch the end of that thermometer off this? Just put some beer or cider onto that.
There you go.
A bit more.
What is this? Cider or beer?
Cider.
Mixed berries with cider.
Ah, that's why it's pink.
I'll explain it, wouldn't it?
Leave a lid over there now.
Something black there on the side.
12, so 48.
How's your fruit fly there? The Galway Bay, wouldn't you?
People need to see this.
So this is the 30-minute edition of another 10 grams of EKG and 10 grams of Progress, sorry. And I don't have my spoon.
Yeah. It's actually seaweed, carrageen moss. And it's just a professional formulation. Don't know what's in it. It's a patented Kerry Foods. Kerry Foods is the manufacturer.
Alright,
And they hold a patent on it. But there's different formulations. There's the tablet form that most home brewers know. This one is a little bit better. We've tried and tested by splitting batches, and look how quick it clears. But the other thing I noticed is that when you've conditioned your bottle, and let's say it's in the fridge, shake it up, and you'll see that it actually settles quicker. So when your beer is matured and you disturb the sediment,
Yeah.
it settles much quicker later on, not just in the early stages when you're trying to get it to clear. So it's good stuff, whatever's in it. It's carrageen moss and a certain formulation of it. I don't think there's any fillers in that.
Those kind of smell like seaweed.
Oh, it should be, yeah. That has to be rehydrated. It's very important. The powdered version has to be rehydrated, ideally for a couple of hours. And when it becomes really strong seaweed, you know it's all completely rehydrated back into a proper seaweed powder.
And this is what you use in all your competition beers?
All the competition beers, yeah, because it's important to get the beer clear. But you also don't want to use something that will take flavours out of the beer, because there's certain things like finings afterwards. What's the name of them? Isinglass, is it? isinglass is a common one, and there's other ones.
Gelatin as well.
Gelatin, bentonite is some sort of clay, but they tend to drag other things like nice hop flavours out of your beer. So the kettle finings tend not to do that. So it's good. Kettle finings is what you've just done there, is where the kettle is the boil, and these are the type of finings. It's the seaweed. You can actually use real seaweed as live whole seaweed as well. Some people use, and it tends not to affect the flavours. Whereas when you use finings at a later stage, when your beer is almost ready to drink, some people use finings before they bottle the beer, and it tends to pull a few flavours out, as opposed to leaving those lovely flavours in. Fresh hops, flowers, cider feather flower. What do you normally?
I always do leaf, because
I think there's something a little bit better in the leaf. We do also the blind tests in Kildare, where we get people to smell different things. You don't see what's in the jar, let's say, you get to smell. So we get, let's say, a Hallertauer is a variety of hop. We've done this a couple of times because we have our own fresh ones we grow ourselves. So we've done this numerous times. Fresh hop straight off the plant, which have been frozen. Fresh hop straight from the plant, which have been dried and then frozen, and ones you buy from the suppliers, which would be commercial dried hops. And the one that always wins in the flavour aroma, the aroma is the fresh ones. They're just much more floral, much more perfumey. And after that is the flowers that are dried, and after that always comes the commercials. And I'll challenge any commercial producer to do that test. We've done it dozens of times, and every single time, the fresher the hop flowers, the nicer the aromas. And I can only presume that the beer will turn out much more full flavoured as well. So it's worth trying at home as well. Get some fresh hops if you can. They are around. Lots of people in the brew club are growing hops now.
Yeah,
so
I grow hops myself as well.
you grow hops, yeah. So if anybody wants, don't be afraid to contact me if you want a handful of hops. I'm not going to send you on a few kilos, but if anybody wants to play around with fresh hops and just try it, maybe in a few bottles, put a single hop into a bottle. That's one of the experiments I do for people who are learning to brew. Just make your beers normal, and then maybe in 1 or 2 bottles, stick a single hop cone into the bottle, condition it, and then see how that fresh hopped beer compares to a beer without a fresh hop.
How do you estimate your AA values?
Well, you don't, because you won't get AA, you won't get acid from it really. You won't get much of an improvement when you don't boil it. So simply by dropping, it's called dry hopping, where you just literally put a fresh hop, or even part of a fresh hop, into a bottle of beer. It's for educational purposes, just to see how the actual fresh hop makes a difference to your finished beer. That's all it is, and it gets you to learn the sort of flavours and aromas that comes from a particular type of hop. So you could pick any hop. You could pick a German Hallertauer, you could pick a citrusy American hop, or a fresh hop, you know, grown in Kildare or grown in Dublin. It doesn't really matter. So
how many varieties are you growing over in Kildare?
I have 6 varieties in Kildare. Yeah, 2 inside a polytunnel and 4 outside. And the ones, the most vigorous growth this year is outside. It's the Saz plant. It's already 40 foot. Oh. It's gone up our hop 25 for hop strings we have, and it's gone up the tree. It's an old tree that's died off. It's just a big, like a totem pole. It's a big stump, 25 foot, and then it has wound itself around and reached for the sky. Couldn't find anything, and then start coming back down. It's wrapping its way back down again. So I've had to put up new strings because it grows sideways as well. So yeah, pretty vigorous. And so we can grow hops in Ireland is the message there. Yeah, go try it. They're cheap as chips. Talk around. Anybody who's grown them on the homebrew site will gladly give you a cutting to start off your own hop plant next year. You can grow them in a pot. My most successful plant last year was grown in just a big household bucket, and we got several kilos, maybe 3 kilos of wet hops, which equates to about maybe up to a kilo, near a kilo of dried hops. Depends how hard to dry them. So you can grow them in a bucket. Sunny back wall, they say, give it plenty of sun, keep it away from frost, so no trouble growing hops. They do grow in Ireland. White Gypsy is the classic example. They're growing again down, and they have been for years, I think.
And do they do a seasonal batch using their fresh hops?
Yeah, this is there's several. I'm trying to think of the name of the big American craft brewer. They do a seasonal fresh hop. This could be Sierra. No, there's another one. Dogfish Head is the one I was thinking of. Maybe Sierra Nevada do as well. But they swear by these seasonal fresh hop beers. There is no comparison. We've done it twice, and it's something much more pleasant about beer grown with fresh hops. I sort of say it's a bit like fresh coffee. You know, when you grind your beans and you make this lovely cup of fresh. If you like coffee, of course, it's lovely fresh coffee compared to instant coffee. It's a bit like that. It's lovely freshness comes. So a lot of the big Dogfish Heads in Sierra Nevada, they swear by these seasonal fresh hop beers. So what they do is they take them straight from the plant and use them in the brew. They're not dried and preserved and stored. They're straight from the plant. So I think most people would agree when you've experienced fresh versus dried or fresh versus pellets. I think there is a sort of a scale where the best is the fresh, but they're seasonal, so that's why you can't have them all the time.
Which would be your favourite, pellets or leaf?
Leaf, without a doubt. Yeah, leaf without a doubt. Again, because we do the taste test and the smell test all the time with people to get people's opinions on it. And, on blind tests, the leaf always comes out on top.
It's good to know. The context of this beer.
Some people say it's more gunk to take out, but you can sieve that out with a big sieve or something if you want. You know, there's no big deal there.
And you'll see with my boiler later now when it's chilled, the leaf hops just work really well.
Yeah.
Rather than
for filtration.
Yeah, the pellet just blocks my hop stopper.
Yeah. I suppose that's because the flowers stay big and porous, whereas the pellets compact down into it. They're just going to block your pipe. Yeah.
It's just a 5-minute edition of the same that's been going so far. 10 grams of each type of hops. PKG in progress.
Try me for 3 weeks. Then it was in the second week. That's an energy.
Okay, just 1 minute edition. Normally, I'm only adding 20 grams. If this was a normal American style beer that I would brew, I'd be adding 50 grams now or 100 grams. But because it's an Irish red, we have to back off with the aroma hops. So we chilled the beer then for, that took a long time. I think that took about 30 minutes, 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah, 30-40 minutes. I think that's just because it's the middle of summer and our municipal water supply, the water is quite warm at the moment. Whereas during the winter, you get a nice cold water out and you chill it a lot quicker.
Yeah, and you know, we got it down as far as 25, 26 degrees today, and that is really at the limit of what's acceptable for the yeast.
Yeah.
So I did pitch the yeast, but we were discussing it today. By the time it really gets going, I'm going to bring that home and put it into a container and fill that container with ice, not ice cubes, but you know those
ice packs.
Reusable ice packs. And while that won't bring it down to 18 degrees, it might bring it down to between 20 and 22.
20 and 22.
And that it does. I put the thermometer in with it the last brew I did, and that did consistently keep it around there. So I change those twice a day, and hopefully that will kick in before the yeast start getting stressed or producing any fruity flavors.
And I noticed you used a tank of oxygen to oxygenate your beer. You didn't just shake it up like the rest of us.
I did.
Do you think that makes a difference?
I kind of do both. You'll see from the video that I did fill from a height, and you'll see that massive amount of foam. I think that's the most foam I've ever had from a brew. So you can get up to, I think, is it 8 parts per million or 8 parts level of oxygen from shaking, and no matter what you do, you can't get higher than that.
Yeah.
So with oxygenation stone and oxygen, you can bring that up to 14 parts.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of where the yeast really want to be. 8 is fine. It'll still ferment, and you'll probably still get it down to a low enough gravity that'll taste fine. But the oxygen gets a little bit lower, and that everything I've done about this beer has been to make it as dry as possible. Yes, I want malt flavor, but I don't want it too sweet. I think a lot of red ales are very sweet and leave a kind of an aftertaste in your mouth, kind of sickly sweet.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't like the Irish red style Irish red style, pardon me, because that is most of the examples here I find are very sweet finish.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do get a nice dry Irish red, it can be very tasty.
So I've a lot of the recipe and the temperatures have been chosen to dry it out.
Yeah.
I mashed low at 65 degrees, so that should ensure it finishes drier anyway.
Yeah.
I poured it in from a height, and you saw how much it foamed, and also oxygenated as well. So it's actually probably borderline over oxygenated at this point. But if it finishes low, I'm aiming somewhere between 10-10 and 10-12 final gravity, and if it ends there, I'll be more than happy. And
so anyway, so we look forward to trying that. By the time this episode comes out, you'll probably have tasted it.
I hope so.
You hope so. So, and best of luck in the competition.
Thanks very much.
Cheers. Thanks very much, Shane, and thanks very much for watching the episode.
Thank you.
ants.
Jesus, there's. Fuck, I'm looking amazed there's none on me. You washing off the ants?
Yeah.
Jesus.
They're really pissed off.
Yeah.
Especially considering there's a bank of rain right there.